happens if you lie enough times? My wife says even you yourself will start to believe it. I think that's one of the dangers, but I guess believing it yourself can become its own monster. Not just, oh, I believe my lies, but what reality are you in? How delusional have you become? You get pissed, impatient, and have to whoop ass. Brian says, if you repeat a lie often enough, I get pissed, impatient, and have to whoop ass. Yeah, that might be an option, I guess.
What happens when other people don't know it's a lie, though?
Okay, that's a good question. What happens if other people don't know it's a lie? What happens when it's manipulated and altered in a manner to construe the actual truth?
You mean propaganda?
Propaganda is what she called it. Wow. So wait a minute. Propaganda. Wasn't there another group of people that used propaganda really hard?
Other than our own government?
Recognizing you have a problem is not always for you to figure out. Yeah, you probably should stay unaware, right? Like, is that what you mean? Like, staying...
Ignorance is not bliss.
Ignorance is not bliss?
It may seem like it at the time.
I think ignorance is bliss, to me, is the ultimate going along to get along. I think if we start to lie enough as a culture, we not only forget what was true and what's not true, I believe we can truly, without ever talking about it, after a couple generations, begin to socially just alter, weed out, kill, manipulate the people or the situations we want to or don't want in our life. Socially, I don't think we stand up the same way we used to corruption.
And replace with our own personal rhetoric.
We remove what's going on and replace it with our own beliefs and rhetoric. Make sure that people trust you and have the best interest and are responsible enough to be trustworthy. Well, that's true too. Absolutely. I think the big thing is when people who are set forth or elected, who have sworn oaths to uphold and stand up to certain levels of scrutiny, and they're not willing to do that, I think that in itself is a lie. That in itself is corruption. That in itself is people who can't be trusted. It's just wanted to start a discussion about lies, about truth, about manipulating and construing for one's own belief. Can we take the long way around?
Yeah.
Just a chance. I think our founding fathers had it right. Okay. Oh, heck no. This has never been in the history of man. It is a different kind of battle, waiting for everyone to understand and get on the same page. I've been waiting since 9/11. You know, Brian Johnson, I think it was way before that. I've had older people tell me that it was going on before I was a kid. I do think it is becoming a different kind. I do think you're right that it is developing to a new way. It's evolving into a monster because culturally we have been accepting lies for so long. We just believe that because somebody has been arrested by the cops, they are a criminal and they should just be treated that way. And the cops can literally just state the same 3 sentences that was within the expectations of the police department and our high standards of our code of ethics. And they can ignore any behavior because they were just being a cop. I was a job. I was doing my job. I was 9 to 5 and I was at work, so I was a cop. I can do anything. Duh, don't you know that? It's the law. If you don't know that, you're stupid. If you don't know the judge will literally... You know... Police are policy... No, police are worse than policy enforcers. Police are kids who are picked on. You know what I believe that corrupt police lead to? And this is my biggest thing. All the stuff going on with Epstein in our country. Why does the stuff like Epstein happen? How can there be a whole island where pedophilia is a way of life? I will tell you, in my opinion, how that happens. That happens when people like Sean Sant and judges like Franklin County judges are willing to molest. See, when they are willing to alter and to construe together, to form a tight-knit bond and collude together with the police department, I think it leads to an ultimate power that becomes addictive. And down the road, what do you do with all your time and all your power? You end up molesting children. You end up taking from them their innocence. You become addicted to robbing innocence from everyone. You know, I remember that morning. I remember being woke up. My wife's grandma called, and I just remember that morning very distinctly, Brian. And I hope that woke a lot of people up to what's going on, to what is the real truth. And
it opened up another door for propaganda.
Yes, unfortunately, it's opened up another door for propaganda. It has opened up another door for all these red flag laws. Now our government allows, like, oh, well, we need to keep us safe, and we're going to send these cops out like they're detectives, and they're going to figure out and solve all the crime of what happens. You know, what do you get when you mix a mentally ill man with a society that abandons him and treats him like garbage? What do you get? It's another question. It's our government that has gotten out of control and that has lost their mind. Our founding fathers knew that a tyrannical government was the greatest threat to the individual and the greatest threat to justice for all. But our judges are more willing to molest and alter the basic guides of the judiciary system.
I can't see through your hand.
You know, Brian, I think all of our truth, once we start to see it and express it, it does affect everyone. We have to be willing and able to accept those truths. The more they are, the more you see these truths to be self-evident, the more you got to talk about them. You know, once you see something and you know it's real, you can't back down. Like, that's just, that's who I am, at least. I'm. How do I help you help us? Brian, how do we do that? How do we help each other? How do we change this? How do we affect more fully the policies? Well, I think hopefully you don't think you have every answer. I don't think anybody has every answer, but share a couple answers. What is your opinion? Get a job and get back to work? Oh, man. Share an answer. Tell me an idea. How do we fix the problem? How do we stop these cops from molesting our children and standing up against everything that we see fit? You know, how do we stop these cops from hitting and beating and kicking on people? They become addicted to it. It's become a way of life. Put the brakes on the destruction that at a level that put a brakes on the destruction that at a level that is enforceable and realistic. On what destruction? What is the destruction? What do you see as the destruction? I agree with that. We give them the power. You know, Brian, I think the thing is we got to wake up the masses. Most people think, you know, it's crazy and it can't be happening. And, you know, trying to explain to people what's been happening to me, I either sound like a crazy guy, or if they take time to listen to it all the way, they don't believe it's real. They're like, that can't be happening. The judges aren't corrupt in Franklin County. They're not in bed with the prosecution. It's not like the old days where they're all sitting around a table. They're just all involved in the same thing, and they all have the same thing in profit. The same thing in motive, and that's profit. They all want to make money. They all want to keep things level, smooth, and easy, because nobody wants to go to work and have a hard day's work. So if we just all keep it simple, we can take whatever we want. And that's, to me, the biggest problem is, like, right now here in Franklin County, the judges in Franklin County have literally thrown out their own canon of ethics. Hold on a second. Sorry about that. The very canon of ethics that we give the judges the ability to judge us upon, they have thrown those out. They are wiping their ass with the canon of ethics. And without the canon of ethics, The judiciary has no power from the people. The people give them the power under that basic guides of structure. Bankers taking every dollar paid in taxes and putting it in their accounts. Tax-free, every penny. You know, Brian, I have to say that I'm not a big fan of taxes. I think taxes and the idea that we can tax our way out of this, or we can take money from anybody, will never work. It's been tried. Every society in all of human history has always tried taxing their way out of the problem. And every society in all of history has always crumbled. Why don't we acknowledge that? Why don't we explain that? Why don't we talk about that more? Why don't we talk? That's a big lie right there that we keep repeating. I think that's a lie right there in itself, Brian. Not from you, but that society keeps repeating that. That taxes can fix the problem. Funding from the Justice Department. You know, I wonder at what level our government is really truly just making crime. Because there are a lot of books that have been written even hundreds and thousands of years ago that discussed the crime that would be created. It said they would create criminals. They would turn one against another to make criminals. And then you get to, there's the Bible. Right will be wrong and wrong will be right. How much more proper is that? How free are you to speak your religion? Hey, Brian Johnson, I don't know if you're of what religion you are, but can I ask you a quick question? Do you think it is fair or plausible that a man break into a mosque or a church or a synagogue and force another man by gunpoint to worship a different religion or God? Yeah, you're right though. That is why they're greedy. They're just hungry to get you in their hands. You're right about that one, Brian. I agree with you there. Man, that's a true statement. Where two or more are gathered, yeah. So, is it okay that a man break in at gunpoint and force you to worship a different God? How about a guy break into your house and you and your kids are there worshiping God, and he forces you at gunpoint to worship Allah? Or maybe you believe in Allah and he forces you to worship Jesus. Do you find that acceptable, Brian? And at what point do you stand up and say no more? At what point do you say no more taking from my family my ability to exercise my freedoms of religion, my freedoms of speech, under this guise that, well, it's not right and you can't just go around exercising it freely? That's part of freedom of speech. As long as, there's certain guides, you can't call fire in a crowded theater unless there's a fire. Oh. And when you become a public official, here's a little story for you. Once you become a public official, you agree to being in the limelight. Right up front. Yeah, that's what you are. You're a public official. People get to see what you do every day. If you don't like it, quit your job or go home and put your revolver in your mouth in front of your children. I like that one. Just go home and tell your kids you've been a failure your whole life. You've been lying and abusing families and children, taking their fathers away from children just because you have a basic agenda and you won't be questioned and your authority is number one and you're in charge. Go home, put your revolver in your mouth and tell your children you are a disappointment to all of humanity. Maybe that would help. No man controls another man's destiny, and no man can take away another man's integrity. But that man can take his word or his integrity and freely give it away. That quick. That quick. Instantly. Just... We're all on our own journey. If you impose your will and wishes on anyone else, then you infringe on their liberties and pursuit of happiness. Yeah, the other there. I got it. That's, and there's so many little technical... Oh, man. If you impose your will and wishes. Your will. I agree with that. Brian, I think that's a big statement right there. So, like, if the police were imposing their will because they don't want me to be speaking out against them, so they go ahead and lie on court documents, is that imposing their will? Let me ask you that, Brian. Do you think that's imposing their will by lying on court documents to try and further their legal agenda? Anyway, I'm tired of the abuse of Franklin County, of the judiciary. They have forgot their purpose. THERE. They don't deserve to be a person. Fuck that. Like honestly, they have forgotten their purpose. They're not there to come after us for yelling at them and telling them what we think about them. That's not what they're there for. They don't get paid to do that. They don't have any right to come after us. They don't have any right to spend thousands of taxpayer dollars to silence their political opponent or what they call their famous protester. Hold on. It's going to be dark outside for a second. Oh. It really... No. They've lost their ever blasted effing mind. Like, there's no humanity left in Pasco and any of Franklin County. And the idea that there's any justice for anybody... If you're molesting one person, if you're being improper to one person, there's no justice. There can be no justice. You can't even think there's justice. That is why it says, under the canon of ethics, which hold the judge accountable, that there may not even be the appearance of an impropriety. Because even if it looks like the judge is being improper, the judge is wrong. Yet when the judge is actually committing legal improprieties, then what do we do? At what point do we ask the judge to step down? Anyway, I'm exhausted. It's been a long week. If you lie enough times, does it become believable? Or are we just molesting those around us? Are we altering the minds of the people near us and closest to us?